Hey everyone, so thank you very much for joining me. Today, what we're going to focus on is our Q&A. So, we have a few people here right now. More might drop in, but what I want to do is see if you guys have any deals for me to underwrite. Otherwise, I can look for a few deals for us to underwrite based on what I have in my CRM right now. Aaron, Peter, do either of you guys have a deal that you'd like to underwrite together?
Oh,
Any
I
deal
sent
at all?
you an email regarding that multifamily.
You did. Let's see if we have a more straightforward deal to underwrite right
Oh,
now, because we can underwrite that one. The problem is it's not really going to play into a calculator like this or a
oh,
tool
okay.
like this. It's going to have to be much more custom because looking through, it is multifamily, but it's a portfolio. It's multiple units and it's got a lot of nuance to it. Like underwriting it is going to be very niche into the overall value. I'm
Okay.
still happy to do that for us later too. So we'll probably focus on that one. But if you have any other deals at all that you'd like to underwrite, let me know. Otherwise, we can just pull up some deals.
I could give you one if you want.
Yeah, let's do it. The more creative, the better.
This one is in Texas.
Cool.
You want the address?
Yep, go for it. Oh, let me make so as always, right? The first step you do when you get my calculator, right? This is the page you guys are going to see. If you have my calculator, whether it's the free one or the paid one, your page is always going to look like something like this, right? You're going to come here, you're going to click make a copy. You're going to all right, let's say this is, oh, what did I just do? Okay, so we're gonna change the name to Peter Demo. And then you're gonna go to File, and then you want to organize it wherever you're underwriting your deals. So for me, it's calculators, and then we have practice underwriting is where this is gonna go. So you're always making a copy of the calculator. That's like the first, that's the foundational step, always. That's how I can share it with everyone. So let's get into the deal now. Go for it. Property info.
Oh yeah, I typed it in the chat.
Oh, okay, cool. You typed it in the chat. Okay, I'll put it here. Oh, okay, cool. Deal terms, perfect. So I'll copy that. I'm not familiar with this location, but let's
Neither am I.
go fast, price small, but outside of what major city? The hell?
It's like north
I
of
mean,
Houston, I believe.
yeah, very, 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 very north of Houston. Okay. That's gonna make it a lot tougher, I'll tell you right now with the rental
Okay.
comps, but I'm still gonna go through it just to see. So it's a 3x2, 1850 square feet. Looks like my dummy data is pretty close.
Oh
We
yeah.
can put 2019 for year built. I mean, that's under comments. We can put other stuff later as we Google it. So we have a purchase price of 407,292, interest rate of 4.37, total monthly payment of 2909, entry 20K plus closing. Okay, so you have that broken down. Perfect. PITI, principal, interest, taxes, insurance, amazing. HOA, not amazing. Okay. Um, I guess I could just keep this on screen to make it a little easier. All right, so do you have an entry cost breakdown? No, but I'm assuming is there an agent involved or no?
Yes. There's a 10,000 for the agent and the seller, and there's an assignment fee of 10,000.
So 10,000 split between the agent and seller.
Correct. Yes.
Or is the seller paying the agent up from that 10,000? That's probably the
I'm
easiest
not
way.
really quite sure, but it's
Okay.
10,000 to the seller and agent.
Okay, so the best way, not each, right? Total.
Total.
So the best way to think about it then is that included in this purchase price? Or is this
Uh,
the exact loan amount? This looks like a very exact loan amount right here.
no, it is tacked on to it. So the underlying existing loan is 387, so another 20,000 equals to 407.
Okay, so what we're gonna do for the purchase price, we're gonna put the cash to seller plus the loan amount here, and then the 10,000 for the wholesale is gonna be separate over here, okay? Otherwise, we wouldn't include it in the entry cost, so we're gonna say is okay.
Okay.
407, 292 minus, oh, whoops, I did that wrong. All right, we actually don't need to do anything, so 397, 292 down payment. $10,000 of that is going to go to the, let's make this a little smaller, is going to go to the seller, which, and then if they pay the agent from that, that's fine. We don't need to account for that any extra. For right now, I'll put all this at 0. Admin reimbursement fee, we don't have to worry about this right now, and there's 10,000 to the wholesaler. We'll put 0 months for the carrying costs, so we'll build all that out after. We
Okay.
could put 0 or whatever. All right, so purchase price, 397, 292, down payment of 10,000. So it's a straight sub 2 deal, correct? There's no seller finance equity.
No.
Okay, 7, 292. So that'll, 387, because we're paying $10,000 of that up front. So the seller finance, none of that stuff matters. It's just the monthly payment, and the monthly payment for subject 2 is going to come from the original loan amount, the way it's set up. I don't think you have the original loan amount. What we can do is go on to Propstream. And if you guys ever need a link for a Propstream trial, let me know. I work with Propstream, so
Okay.
I can get you a free trial. Actually, I will drop my link underneath this video. Once you all unlock it, you have to unlock this though. The replays, you gotta unlock the replays. There you go, Willis, Texas. Details. Oh, so yeah, they have no equity at all. At least from what Propstream thinks. Oh, they have more properties.
Michael, in your opinion, is Propstream the best tool for gathering this kind of data that's out there?
It's the best estimate until you can get the real info from the mortgage statement.
Okay.
All you can do is just use the best estimates from my experience. Could there be better tools out there? Sure. From my experience, it's the best user interface, easiest way for me to just get enough data to start underwriting the deal before, I call this soft underwriting, where I'll do the best that I can with the information that I have, and then I will get all the right documents to then verify hard underwriting to ensure like, okay, now I'm very confident with all the data that's presented to me. And that includes title, making sure there's no additional liens, like all of that stuff. But yeah, so, and the problem with Texas is, I believe it's similar to Alaska, where it's a non-disclosure state. So you don't exactly know the amount it was bought for. Says 5.25, what did you say? 4.37. See, it's assuming a lot of stuff, right? That's all it can do is assume.
Yeah. I think that's what they bought it for, $399, because it's a VA loan.
Yeah, so they might have the full VA loan amount. So we can go that route right here. So we're gonna say 399. Was it 399 exact?
Yeah, I think so, $399.
Yep. And then so what we're doing is we're putting the original loan terms to get us what the monthly principal and interest is. So we'll see how accurate that is. 4.37% interest rate, 30-year loan term. The first payment date is going to have been, loan due date is 7/1/2052. So most loans are 30-year loans. So you just subtract away 30 years, right? Because we know this one was recently bought because they have no equity. Otherwise, they wouldn't be selling a straight 2. So you can infer it's not a 15-year. It's a 30-year, and they just got it in 2022. So 7/1/2022. 7/01. Okay, so it says 1990.97. Let's see what you had for principal and interest. Okay, so equals 580 plus 1412. We're within $2. That's solid. Maybe this is more like 4.4 or something like that. No, whatever. We'll keep it as is. Within $1 rounded up. That's amazing for soft underwriting until you can get all the full info. This original loan amount could be slightly different. This actually could be a little higher because the VA loan, it's not just the purchase price. You can roll in your funding fee. That's a thing you have to pay for VA loans unless you have disability and all this. We're not going to infer too much. We just know the loan amount is at least this amount. 399. It says the loan amount is around 387. And that's basically what we said too, right? 387.
Yeah.
Pretty close to that. Yeah, 397, 387. Look at that. Perfect. Okay. I wonder if they got the info from Propstream or they got it from a mortgage statement, because that's almost too perfect. So now let's go into underwriting it. Sub 2 loan, we have the taxes and insurance. We have their actual numbers. So taxes are 667. So that's actually really good. Let me explain why. This is a high tax amount. A very high tax amount, which means even though they're veterans, they don't have a homestead exemption or anything that makes the PITI, the monthly mortgage payment, seem lower than it actually should be once you acquire the property. Does that make sense? That if this was like $50 or, $100 a month, that'd be really low taxes for the year on a property, in a state like Texas. So you'd assume, okay, there might be some exemptions that they get for like a homestead exemption for living in it, or there might be exemptions, for the, being a disabled veteran or, military or whatever. It's very good to know that it's like a reasonable tax amount, because that is more than likely the accurate tax amount until it gets reassessed, right? Because the property value went up in value, or the property went up in value. Then we have our insurance. So you could put the monthly amounts here and then multiply this by 12, or you can just put, like in the code, you submit in the calculator, right? You're going to replace the pink values. So you can put 667 times 12 as a code there, and then it'll just divide by 12 here. Or you can just put 667 manually, overwrite this, but you want to make sure to still put this times 12 is this value. It's a little nuanced, whatever, just you want the annual amounts. So the easiest way to do that is just to put 12 times 167 to get the annual amount, and then it should be the right monthly amount after. That's the best way to do it, is to put the right, usually you have the annual amount, sometimes you don't, and that's okay, you could just add that in there. So HOA 83, because it's a VA loan, even if they have little to no equity, there is no property mortgage insurance, PMI. That would happen if it was a conventional loan with a low down payment or an FHA loan. But in this instance, because it's a VA loan, there is no PMI, which is one of the benefits of VA loans. Because it's a single family home, we're going to assume all the utilities are covered by the tenants. We're just going to ignore all that and then keep the standard property management, vacancy, maintenance, and CapEx at 10, 8, and 10. Because that's standard for a long-term rental is 10%. Vacancy is 8%, which translates to approximately 1 month a year it's vacant. And then maintenance and capital expenditures at 10%. Even though there's a new build, you still want to be saving for those expenses because those will come up. So we have the data we need from Propstream. We'll move on from that. We have the, so what we have now is we have our debt information set up. We don't have our full entry cost, but we do have our down payment to the seller and the assignment fee. These are funds that I worry about. Let's not worry about this for the most part for everyone. Let's just get rid of it. When I'm buying properties, I have a variety of administrative costs and reimbursement costs I need to account for as part of my entry costs, because I need to raise the capital for them, which includes paying my transaction coordinator, whether a wholesaler has their own or not. I'm going to use mine because they know how to do it through our system, to form a new LLC to acquire this property in, to cover the inspection, to pay back the EMD plus the in this instance, if you're part of sub 2, you understand what Gator means, but someone is lending you the earnest money deposit to get into the deal, and you're going to pay them a premium on for borrowing those funds. So in this example, it's $2,000 for the EMD and Gator loan of $500. None of this stuff matters for you guys for the most part. Just don't worry too much about that, unless these are, you're the end buyer and these are the costs you want to account for. It's very custom to you and your business and how you raise capital and what things you're paying for. But we'll have our closing costs at 2%, our down payment at 10,000, a sign fee at 10,000. I always recommend at least 3 months of reserves, regardless of the strategy. It just gives you some buffer if and when things go wrong, you have that accounted for. So right now we're already looking at around $37,000 entry cost, just as is, assuming no rehab or anything like that, and assuming it's a long-term rental. We have our debt information. So the first payment will more than likely be the start of next month, since it's pretty close to the mortgage payment due date, which is the middle of the month. That's like when it's due by. Well, it's due by the first of the month, but you have up until like the 15th to make your payment for the month. So we're going to assume the seller's going to make that payment, and you will take over and make them the following payment. This just helps. This just helps the amortization. So This is gonna show you based on when the loan started, right? Where are you in the cycle for the loan? And we're actually right around the 2-year mark. And you can see green means payments that have been made. So you can see how much equity has been built up, and you can see the total amount of equity. Right here, how much equity has been paid down, which makes sense, right? It's the principal amount that was paid. So you can see like the principal payment, how much went to principal, how much went to interest. This number will go up every single month until your loan is paid off. That's the way amortization, loan amortization works. And that's kind of what this shows you, is at what point do your principal and interest on your monthly mortgage payment, at what point do they like cross, and are you now making more towards principal versus interest? So you can see it takes over 10 years, right, to get to that point. This is what, around the 13-year, 14, 15-year mark. I don't know. It says 5/7/1/2036. You're right around the middle mark. All right, so this is good as a reference, but this is really important because unlike a seller finance or a new loan, you're not starting at the beginning of the amortization schedule. You're starting somewhere in the middle. And for certain deals, let's say you're starting 3, 4, 5 years in the middle. Well, that actually has a valuable benefit because part of your return on investment isn't just the cash flow you're generating from the property, but it's also the principal pay down. The amount your tenants are paying on your mortgage, they're paying down your mortgage for you. And the further you are in your loan amortization schedule, the more of that monthly payment is going towards principal, as opposed to just not being wasted, but kind of wasted on interest. Although interest does have its benefit because that's tax deductible if you qualify for those deductions. So let's get into it. We have our entry cost, our loan info. We have our monthly, we have our expenses, plus our reserves. So now we need to figure out what the rental income is. Do you know what exit strategies you had in mind for this? And what the HOA restricts? So this HOA of $83, I don't really care about the payment. Well, I do. Is this a monthly payment of 83 or is this quarterly? Probably not annual. Do you know? Oh, Peter, you're muted.
It is monthly HOA.
Monthly HOA. Do you know what if and what restrictions there are? That's something I would definitely ask the wholesaler.
There's no yeah, short term is not allowed.
Okay, so that's good to know. So I'd put that in the comments.
Short term is not allowed, and the LTR is estimated about 2,600.
Who told you that?
The wholesaler.
I bet they did. All right, so let's verify that. Let's stick with that number for now.
Okay.
600, and let's see how it underwrites. Keep the market rent the same because the way this calculator works is the rent will give you the analysis here as a long-term rental, but the pro forma rent, or the rent that you're going to get it to, will then be utilized for this more longer term deal analysis, which forecasts for the next 30 years actually, but then gives you a summary for 1, 5, 10, and 20 years. So that's this long-term analysis. It is forecasting the next 30 years of income, expenses as they continue to increase, your reserves, debt payments, what your cash flow looks like, plus all the other benefits of real estate, right? Not just cash flow and cash on cash return, but also property appreciating in value. You know, let's say we set this at 3%, you can set it at whatever is reasonable for that market. And then what the appreciation would be, what debt pay down benefits you get. Remember, I'm mentioning every month you make a mortgage payment or your tenant makes that payment, right, and exceeds your mortgage, you're paying principal of the loan down as well as interest. So the debt pay down is here. These are actual gains to your net worth. They're literally adding value to your net worth. So you want to account for that ROI, but also depending on your tax situation, your tax bracket, there's depreciation tax benefits as well as depreciation tax benefits, as well as the interest payments are also tax deductible. So all those benefits are fully calculated here for the next 30 years. Oh, this is kind of congested. Let's add, I'm going to minimize this for now and I'll deal with it later. All right, cool. So let's, now that we talked about the long term, remember once again, that's using your pro forma debt. Okay, it's using your pro forma debt. So let's look at this as a long-term rental then. We have $2,500 a month or $2,600 a month of long-term rental income as stated by the wholesaler. We're going to get into how to actually verify that. And we're going to utilize the insurance and taxes that was brought to us. And in my opinion, this is fairly accurate based on my knowledge of Texas. Taxes are high, very high percentage of your monthly, I'm sorry, they're a very high dollar amount compared to lots of states because they don't have income tax. So the government within states, just as well as federally, they're going to get their money one way or another. So if a state has no sales tax or no income tax, they're going to make their money one way or another. And one of those ways is property taxes. Similar to Alaska, no sales tax, no income tax. They're going to get their money through property taxes. So that's one of the things to consider is you're going to pay a lot of property taxes in states that don't have other taxes, right? They still need to generate the revenue they need to. And this is fairly in line because it's a very high property tax amount. We can do is actually pull this up on Zillow real fast. Just to see, was this, talk to me about the situation. I know a wholesaler brought it to you. Do you know anything about the seller's motivation or anything like that?
That I do not know.
Because I like to know that stuff right away. Like that's, in my opinion, the most important because that's how you negotiate. Looks like they tried selling it for 405 before and couldn't. So this is an expired listing, but a whole year ago that then someone put under contract down the line.
Yeah.
Listed for sale, pending, and then removed, which is really weird because usually it doesn't go in this sequence if it's for sale. I mean, if it's been sold, usually it'll say sold, even if they don't have the dollar amount because the non-disclosure state, you're not going to know what the dollar amount will be. You can assume it's pretty close, but you're not gonna know specifically unless you, yeah. Yeah, it's not a crazy picture here. It's brand new. I mean, I assume everything's in great condition for the most part, since they tried relisting it on the market and all that. Do you
Yeah.
know like that? Okay, so
Oh
we're
yeah,
gonna,
yeah. The property says it's in almost turnkey condition.
okay. Let's see if there's another, let's see if we can find an old listing. Look at that. At least Realtor has 25 photos. That's cool. Beautiful.
That looks
And what were
staged.
you thinking about doing with this property?
If I was to purchase this, I
Virtual.
would do a co-living for sure. But I don't know if the HOA is going to
So,
allow
well,
that.
co-living's great, but co-living requires, right. That's one thing, the HOA. And also depending on if you're manually setting up your co-living, you can do that all you want. If you're going to utilize a major platform like PadSplit, for example, once again, I have a referral down below if you want. Get linked up with PadSplit. We love PadSplit. We love renting out our properties through PadSplit as a rent by the room, but they're only in certain markets and they are in main parts of those markets. So if it's like Dallas, Austin, whatever, it's not really going to be like the secondary or tertiary cities. It's going to be the main one in there. It's got to be large enough to accommodate lots of people to make it financially worthwhile. I say at least 5 people, 5 bedrooms need to be there. 1850 3x2, depending on the floor plan, I don't see it being any more than 5 bedrooms. One thing to understand for pad split rent by the room, you want at no more than a 4-bed to 1-bath ratio. So you're not going to really worry about that. My concern is there enough square footage depending on the floor plan? Let's see if they include it. No. Is there enough square footage depending on the floor plan to convert? I mean, you could turn this living room into a bedroom for sure, as long as there's other ways to access, let's say, the kitchen. And then this dining room could potentially, or I guess this is 2-in-1. You can make this 2 bedrooms. If you really needed to make 2 bedrooms, you can add that through here alone. I can already see that. And that's what we do quite often, especially if you got a nice outdoor area. So potentially you could get it to 5 bedrooms. I don't see anything else currently that shows you can make more But because of this hallway and this kitchen, you could literally block off this wall to the entry and split this down the middle for
Okay.
2 beds. So it's gonna be a little more expensive. But other things to consider, will the HOA allow it, right? Is this near anything that makes this a good candidate for? Because I mean, it's pretty far out from Houston.
Yeah.
Really.
Yeah, it is pretty far.
So, there's not really pad split or rent by the room is a problem in cities that are expensive, right? That's why it works really well in Atlanta or certain Florida markets or San Diego, things like that, where it's really expensive to
Rent in general.
at Houston. Let's check out their Houston map and see what's available. Yeah, you see that? Just looking at this
Yeah.
map. Here it is. It's all right here within this circle. You go out too far, and we're talking way far, right? It was, oh, here's Conroe and then Willis. You go this far out, there's not a single property. Let's see if we can get rid of some of the filters. I mean, there really are no filters. Sometimes you can do it like you're cool with it, even if it's not available right now. Let's see how I can do that. We can type in Willis, but it's not gonna.
Okay, I see.
Yeah, see, it's not even one of theirs. We can type in Conroe. Doesn't mean you can't try to rent by the room yourself. Yeah, there's
Yeah, I
nothing.
don't know if I want to
There's one fully
do
booked
that.
home out here.
Yeah.
So it might be possible, and they're expanding, but you might just have to self-manage it until that's possible. Zillow allows you to rent by the room as well, but you got to think about the demand, right? And then what can you charge if it's a lower cost of living area? Like, why would they rent by the room if they could just rent their own place?
I see.
So just something to consider. We're not gonna get too much more into the weeds about that concept. Let's now look at what the terms look like based on the long-term rental estimates. So we have our income, our debt info, our expenses, and all you really need is your income minus your expenses and your entry costs to see how good of a deal this is. Oh, whoops, we're gonna change this to long-term rent. Okay, so our income 2,600, our expenses 2,908. Why? Why does that happen? Why are the expenses so high? So between the sub 2 loan, taxes and insurance, and HOA, that's it. You're already looking at 2,907.
Yeah.
Or, yeah, 2,908 when you round it up. And then you add property management costs, unless you're self-managing. Even then, I still account for property management. Then you account for vacancy and maintenance and CapEx, some of your reserves. It's already negative with just your expenses by $300 a month. And then you add property management reserves, it's over $1,000 negative a month. And you had to spend $36,000 of your own money to then lose $1,000 a month. And even if you say, okay, well, what if we didn't have reserves accounted for? Well, you're still minus almost $600 a month, right? Why would you invest money to do that? Unless the other benefits of real estate investing are really beneficial for you. But from a cash flow perspective, this is terrible. What we can do is look at what are the other benefits and if it's worth it for you. But I like a very, very high ROI, and I like a cash on cash return of at least 10%. If it's a long-term rental, I'm fine with even just being cash flow positive. If it covers my private money lender costs or a private money partner, it makes sense for them. But a private money partner is not going to want to lose money each month. And a private money lender, there's no money to pay them each month. And let's just quickly see what that looks like, right? If you bring in a private money partner, so are using OPM tab, bring in a private money partner and they fund the whole deal. Let's just say you give them 50-50 ownership. They own everything outright. They're going to lose an additional $6,215 a year, and you're going to lose $6,215 a year in negative cash flow. So it's like, why would they do that? Why would anyone do that? There are the other benefits of real estate. They get 50% of the debt pay down, benefits, appreciation. So these are adding to your net worth, interest payments and appreciation, which are tax benefits. Not everyone qualifies for that. And this is assuming you're at the highest tax bracket. It really articulates really negative cash on cash. ROI is roughly 20%, but that's assuming you get to realize all these full benefits first. So it doesn't really make a lot of sense there. If it's negative cash flow, it's not gonna make a lot of sense in the first place. If you bring on a private money lender, obviously if it's negative without a private money lender, but a private money lender is gonna bring in the $37,000 roughly to, at 12% interest, and you're gonna pay them $366.70 a month until the private money lender balloon is due, let's say in 12 months away, and you're gonna owe them that $37,000 back. But you're gonna lose $1,400 a month, each month, while you're
Wow.
doing that. You know, it's like, what's the
Yeah.
point if you're gonna lose that money each month? So.
That
So
makes
obviously, if
total
it's
sense.
negative cash flow, it's not gonna work with a lender or partner, but it's good to kind of see how the calculator can be utilized for those benefits. And you'll see, even when you look at the long term, there's no profitability on this thing anytime soon. Even with rent increasing, expenses will increase over time too, especially in a state like Texas where taxes are reassessed quite frequently. So if the property does go up in value and get some equity, great, but you're gonna lose even more cash flow unless your rent can drastically increase above it. Let's use this one Conroe, Texas example. Where is it? We saw that one property that was fully booked out. They do have one, and it was fully booked out. I don't know how it's 160 to 147, but I would assume private, oh, whoops. I would assume private bathroom versus shared bathroom. In a house with only 2 bathrooms, you're gonna have a lot of, you're going to have a lot of shared bathrooms, basically all of them. You don't have the luxury of a private bathroom because it's only 2, and that's pretty expensive. And you know, there it says this one is near this hospital, whereas Willis is much further. But let's just say, for the sake of underwriting it on the calculator, let's say you know it doesn't work as a long-term rental. Maybe it could work as a pad split. Let's see. So the number of bedrooms you're going to add, this is just an assumption. We saw at least 2 you can add. We can say, let's add those 2. And I have approximately $6,500 dedicated to building out new bedrooms. That's depending on your market, depending on how many walls you're adding, all that, that'll either increase or decrease this amount. We're honestly closer to around 4,000 per, but it just depends on where you're building. If you're closing off one wall and adding a door, that's cheaper. If you're adding electrical or need to do multiple walls, that costs more. And then furnishing approximately $1,500 per every single bedroom in the house. So now your entry cost is $5,700 as an estimate. Your pad split weekly rate is, what we see was like 240 to
160 was the low one.
170 to 240. So we'll just go right in the middle. Oh, you know what? Actually, no, because it's all shared bathrooms. So 170 is fine because it's all shared bathrooms in that house. So the monthly income is 3683. I already know this won't work, but you're gonna have 2908 between the principal, interest, taxes, insurance, and HOA. So right, it says P10 to P15. Show you how to use Excel. So, you know, P10 right here to P15, your principal and interest for your sub 2 loan, taxes, insurance, and your HOA, right, is accounted for there. It's excluding whatever utility costs or whatever there are here, because you're going to add your own utility costs here. You have $600 for water, electric, gas, trash, internet, and landscaping. That's an estimate. You have to be knowledgeable about the market you're investing in to know if that's a solid amount to estimate for that, but we'll stick with that. Pad split, this says 15%. This is the combination of paying pad split there, whatever it is now, 10 to 12%, plus they collect the first 10 days of rental income. So the shorter your lease is, the worse it is for you financially. The longer your lease is, the better it is for you. Plus there's still some self-management required there. So 15% is, because like all pad split does is they're a listing platform. They're not actually managing it. They're a listing platform that has a bunch of tools for you to utilize to manage your tenants, but you still have to actually move them in and schedule cleanings and all that kind of stuff, schedule repairs. So 15% is a good estimate for what the total costs are, which also covers the pad split listing charges. Vacancy at 8%, once again, just translated to 1 month, and the 10% for maintenance and CapEx. So your total expenses are 4723. you're still losing you put in $20,000 to add those 2 bedrooms, made the property worse, honestly, because you're adding bedrooms where living rooms and dining
Yeah.
rooms are, and you're still losing the same amount of value. So even as a pad split in an area that pad split will probably not work well in, and has an HOA, and is far away from any like major amenities, because you want to be near public transport, you want to be in like a major city for pad split to work the best. It's just not a deal that way either. Do I care as if it works as a midterm or short term? No, because it's losing so much as a long-term rental. There's more deals to buy. And what can you negotiate? That's the fun part. So what do you do with this information that you now have? So actually, my calculator automatically gives you a few different scenarios. It says, if you were to reduce the price, which would then lower your down payment, because in a sub 2 transaction, if it's straight sub 2, there's really nothing you can do besides lower the purchase price, which lowers the down payment to the seller or the wholesaler. So what I like to do is I say, okay, let's see in the perfect scenario where we're paying nothing to anyone. How does that look? So let's say our what is this? Oh, because this is still a percentage. So we need to take that. It's based off this 10%. So we need this $10,000, divide the 10,000 divided by the purchase price to get the actual percentage. There you go. So 3-ish%. So now it's going to reduce from that down payment to get you 40% reduction in price, and what the associated down payment reduction would be. Let's say your purchase price in the perfect scenario, there's no cash to seller, there's no cash to wholesale. Let's see if it even works then. And it's not, because if it doesn't cash flow, it doesn't matter what your entry costs are, because a negative number divided by basically nothing or a lot is still negative, right?
Yeah.
It's just, you're putting more or less money in to get it. So, but let's just see, like, it's good to understand what that looks like. So 387, 292, oops. 387, 292. So you're paying nothing to the seller in this instance. They're coming out of pocket to pay the agent is what it means in this instance, because there's no agent amount here, and you're paying nothing to the wholesaler. So you're buying this thing basically as cheap as you can, covering closing costs, and then saving some money for reserves. You can put that to 0 if you want to say, hey, I'm cool with it. It'll work out. Because of the fact that it's negative, it doesn't matter. Your cash on cash return is terrible. And something that's a little disingenuous is the lower this number, actually, the higher the percentage here. Don't worry too much about that. If it's negative, it's bad. I mean, that's basically what you should worry about. But you would think theoretically, if your entry costs are lower, your cash on cash return would be like more profitable, but that's not the case. Because it's just a bigger or smaller number, or it's a negative cash flow negative number for cash flow divided by your entry cost. So if that's higher or lower, it changes your cash on cash return. But if it's negative, right? Actually, I won't get into the weeds of that ratio, but nonetheless, terrible long-term. I don't see it working as a pad split, and there's really no way to negotiate it, because assuming this thing is $0 to the seller, $0 to the wholesaler, it still doesn't work, right? Because the cash flow is negative.
Yeah.
Where this could help is if this thing was generating, let's say, $3,500 a month. Wow, even then, this thing used to generate a lot of money.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my God, what the hell? Oh, because your reserves also increase, right? Because your reserves, vacancy, and property management are all a percentage of your rental income. So those all increase. But I just want to do an actual number to show where this could be. Here, let's say this is the instance, and we are back to the 397. We have 10,000 here and 10,000 here to the wholesaler assignment fee. So in this instance, it generates $332 a month in cash flow. So this is interesting because obviously these numbers are fake, but I'm going to show you how you can account for private money partners and lenders and see, okay, at what point does it make sense or not? So assuming your cash flow with reserves is $332 a month, and these are your total entry costs. Oh, I guess we do have, let's at least do 1 month of reserves. Utilizing other people's money, In this instance, could you get oh, so remember, you need to adjust the market rent as well for it to make sense. At minimum, just set these two values as the same thing. Actually, I might automatically do that now. In this instance, if you had a private money partner come in and it was generating that cash flow, let's zoom in a little bit. In this instance, they would be getting a 6.46% cash on cash return and a 50% return on investment. And a big part of that is because their entry costs are so low to take over a large asset. So this would obviously work as a private money partner, and there's really no secret. If the property generates any positive cash flow and has a cash on cash return, bringing a private money partner is just going to split that. But if it's positive, it's positive. You just don't know what the overall returns are until you actually split it. Typically, it's 50-50. So you can almost, I will say you can always use a private money partner if the cash flow is positive. It's just, what does the overall return look like for them? Is it worth the entry cost or not? But for a private money lender, if you don't want to give up equity and split your cash flow, you can see in this instance, because of the fact that it's now generating a lot of money, you could also, because this is positive, as long as it's positive, you can bring in a private money lender and pay them every single month and have full ownership of this property and generate the cash flow needed to pay them their interest. What you're not going to have in this instance is this $23 of positive cash flow after paying your private money lender a month. That times 12 or your full year, that's not going to be nearly enough to pay back your original loan amount to the private money lender, right? So you're going to have to make up those funds some other way to pay them back. One of the things we do is we recycle one private money lender with another one, whoever wants to come into that and just take over that second position private money lender loan. Some more often than not, our private money lenders who are there already want to just extend, but if not, they can be replaced with another private money lender that will just take this place. And typically, that first year of ownership is more risky, so you pay a higher private money, you pay a higher interest rate. Typically, the next person coming in will take at least 12%, but maybe 10%, maybe 8%, depending on what you're offering them, because now you have a much more stabilized asset with proof of concept with more equity. So they're in a much more secured and better position that second go around than the first go around, especially if you have been able to already pay all the interest payments you said the first time to your previous lender, and you can prove that, hey, look, I've already made this work before. It's even more safe now moving forward. Doesn't mean stuff is not going to come up and make this a total mess, potentially, something might come up, but you do have that luxury. Remember, this cash flow too is after reserves. So at that same time, you've built, let's see what your full year reserves would look like. You saving $810 a month of reserves. Imagine you don't have to use any of that. You saved $9,720. So maybe you can use a portion of that to pay down some of this private money lender amount. And instead of recycling them with someone else to bring in the same amount, you can bring someone at 25,000 or whatever, further increasing your cash flow and leveraging your reserves and the little bit of cash flow you are generating to pay off your private money lender and reduce that amount so you can wipe it away completely.
Okay.
So you don't have to keep the private money lender there infinitely at the same amount or indefinitely at that same amount. You can utilize some of your reserves, some of your cash flow to then reduce that loan amount and recycle them with someone at a lower total private amount. That's why I wanted to really go into that so you can see what it would look like if it did cash flow, but this is so unrealistic, right? These terms.
Yeah.
Another two things, if you're someone like me who raises capital, I advise people to do two things. Never use your money to buy real estate. Unless you're just starting out, don't use your own money to buy real estate because it's not scalable. A business is not scalable if it's fully dependent on you to provide the money to buy the real estate. You want to leverage other people's money, but you also want to utilize your money to lend to others, because once you run out of money, cool, your money's at work generating you returns and is diversified away from your portfolio. That's nice. So use your money to lend to others, use other people's money to buy your real estate. So when you're doing that, depending on if you're going to use a private money lender or a private money partner, I've built out these like little dashboards to kind of showcase, if you're going to use a private money lender, this is all you really need to show them. Okay, here's my total entry cost. here's what it's going to cover, acquisition fees, and this is what I have saved for reserves, right? Of the $30,854, this is going to paying off any acquisition costs. Here's the reserve I'm saving up for. We don't need money for rehab or furnishings. I always put at least a few grand for rehab and furnishings because you're gonna have to clean the property or whatever, especially if a seller is distressed. They're not gonna make sure the property's in perfect condition as if they sold it on the market. They should, but they don't, from experience. And what are you gonna do? Fight them at that point? You just move on, right? You move on, you just take care of it yourself. This shows the deal information and then what the cash flow projections look like. And for you, it's really nice because it shows you what is your cash flow for the end of the year at these different 1, 5, and 10-year marks, depending on the interest that you're using, right? 8, 10, or 12%. Plus, for a private money partner, this shows you what is the returns for a private money partner if you go that route, if you, based on your ownership and cash flow split, what do their returns look like? Not just year one, but over time, so that you can share this with them and show, okay, here's what your returns look like right away. It only gets better with time. So I've got these built out for you as well in the calculator to make it as easy as possible. So just to really highlight, we have the deal analysis calculator where you're going to focus on your profit and loss or your income and expenses, your debt information and your entry costs, and then work through different strategies to see which one of these is financially profitable. And you even have some automated scenarios that kind of just plugs in some analysis for you. What would it look like if you did X, Y, Z? In this instance, we already went fully nuclear, and said we're paying no money to anyone and it still doesn't work out. Then we have, here's your long-term deal analysis, and we have the long-term analysis page. If you really want to look at this over the next 30 years, what does that look like? Because people always talk about one of the benefits is once you pay off the debt, well, what do your returns look like at that point too? It's nice because you can see that once the debt is paid off, for example, let's see. There's no debt left here these last 2 years because remember, you took it over 2 years into its amortization schedule. As long as the debt stays in place, it'll be paid off in 28 years from now. What does your cash flow turn into? And it goes from the 3,000, 30, 100, whatever, down to $5,000 a month at future, right? What the future rents would be. So whatever, this allows you to forecast kind of the benefits long-term. Same with your depreciation, right? You don't depreciate forever. More often than not, you're depreciating over 27.5 years. Once you lose those tax benefits, what do your returns look like? Really good to understand that. If you're leveraging other people's money, what options do you have? As I mentioned, if it's a cash flowing property, you're going to be able to bring in a private money partner potentially, right? That's the bare minimum requirement. It has to cash flow in whatever scenario that you're utilizing, whether you're utilizing, in this instance, we have long-term rental. If you change this to pad split, all the numbers everywhere update to the pad split terms listed here. And even here, you see it's the 51,000 now instead of the 37. This tells you what your returns look like in that scenario. Remember, we faked the long-term rental income, unfortunately, to make this kind of fun to play with. But if you're using private money partner, it needs to be cash flow positive. And assuming it's a 50-50 split, you're splitting 50% of ownership with them. They get 50% of the appreciation, debt pay down benefits or principal pay down, the tax benefits that come with interest payments and appreciation, and they get 50% of that plus 50% of the cash flow if that's what you're offering to them. What I do is typically offer less ownership and more cash flow. And my standard is 32-32. Really between 20 to 32% is kind of how we raise capital for our private money partnerships, but the returns have to justify it for the private money partner. And this will show you the 1, 5, 10, and 20-year analysis on that, what it looks like for them. And if you were to use a private money lender, is this deal viable with a private money lender, right? And you just need this value to be greater than 0 with a private money lender to have infinite returns, because now you're using other people's money to fully acquire the property, and then you have cash flow generated to pay off your private money lender each and every month their interest payment, right? This doesn't guarantee you'll have enough money generated in cash flow to pay back this original loan amount in a year, but what it does do is tell you you can pay the interest payments off each month until you figure out what you're going to do 12 months from now, whether you're going to use your own funds, maybe you're a wholesaler who's generating income that you want to deploy it here, you recycle them with a new lender, whatever. This helps you understand what's viable. And then when it's time to raise capital, you know, right here, okay, if I'm going to use a primary lender, what options work for me? I'm going to use a primary money this is what you can utilize to showcase them. What do the returns look like for them? And we talked about long-term analysis. And then just as always, you have the amortization schedule, which for a seller finance loan, there's nothing here, right? But for a seller finance loan or a new loan, you're just creating one from the start. But for sub 2, it's very important to understand where are you coming into the loan, because the further along in the loan that you are, the more of each of your monthly principal and interest payments are going towards the principal side. So the further along you are, the better it is for you, because you're getting the majority or more of your monthly payment going towards principal, which then pays down the loan, which then adds to your net worth each and every month. Cool. Any specific questions I could try to answer? I try to deep dive as much as I can there. As always, I will say, to get more information like this, you're going to want to definitely check me out on Instagram. Definitely do that. And for sure, check out YouTube, where we go and analyze more and more of these deals, plus my free school community, where
Hey
we,
there. Thanks for checking out
that. My free school community, Wealth Through Real Estate, to get more information on how to underwrite, because this is just underwrite, deal analysis, how to, you know, how to effectively buy real estate. So let's see. We'll go to the Wealth of Real Estate page. Definitely want to join in here to get better at all of these concepts overall and understand the different ways to generate wealth of real estate. You guys have any questions about any of this?
No, that's excellent. No, that was awesome.
Phenomenal, Michael. Thank you so much.
Oh,
Thank you both. I appreciate it. And one of the big things I want to articulate, I don't buy my deals typically at face value from wholesalers. The piece that you saw, which is really my secret, which really isn't, is when a deal comes from a wholesaler, my goal isn't to say, does this work or not? That's one piece of it. It's how can this work? Well, that's when understanding sub 2, you're taking over this loan amount no matter what, and you're taking over this monthly payment. So all you can reduce is the purchase price, which then reduces your down payment. And what other entry costs can you reduce? That's what you need to focus on. See, is it still viable in that scenario? The problem with sub 2 is if it does not cash flow, it doesn't matter how much you reduce the entry cost, it's not going to cash flow.
yeah.
It just won't work either way. So it's really important to understand that, and then what levers you can pull to potentially make it a deal. Because I love telling a wholesaler, I can't buy it like this, but if you're able to get the numbers to this, then I will be your buyer. And that's a really important skill set to develop, because as you know, most deals that come from wholesalers are not great like at face value. But understanding the potential that's there is important, and that's how we close the majority of our deals.
Do you find that you're more heavily weighted on seller finance rather than sub 2?
I would say both. The advantage of sub 2 is that your entry costs tend to be lower, which is nice. Obviously, if it's on market, then you're also paying an agent commission, which adds to it. But the problem with sub 2 is you can't negotiate a bunch. There's not a lot to negotiate, because they're typically they have to have a high level of motivation to be willing to sell subject to. So if that's the case, that means there's really not a lot of wiggle room already. It's not like they have all this equity and now they're just doing it for fun. They like really need to sell. But what you can negotiate is maybe the assignment fee, agent commissions, cash the seller. And where seller finance is nice, but typically the entry costs tend to be higher, because if someone has full equity, they're going to want their money. They're going to want their money. So they're going to want a portion of their equity paid out in advance. But the nice part is you have a lot more you can negotiate on. Why? Because you have every lever to play with. You can talk about your, first of all, the actual purchase price, right? That's kind of the standard. But you can talk about the interest rate, the amortization. Maybe instead of 30 years, you do 50 years. You stretch out your payments even longer. Maybe you do installment payments where you pay them at the end of each year. You pay them a fixed amount. Maybe you, whatever. There's like various ways that you can negotiate with the seller finance that you just cannot with sub 2. That's why I like seller finance. But honestly, we've probably bought more sub 2 this last year than seller finance, only because that's what the market is providing. Because if a seller is open to seller finance, they're a little bit more savvy typically, and they have more options. So they know, well, I can get 5% from a CD. Why would I give it to you at 0%? Right? So there's a lot more back and forth negotiating. So there's more levers to pull, but the seller has a lot more leverage as well. So it's, it's a fine balance of focusing on what do they care about the most. And from my experience, usually purchase price and or down or purchase price. One thing is almost always a very common factor for my seller finance deals. And then it's either the monthly payment or the down payment. One of those is more important to them. It's not usually interest rate, like people think interest rate, but they care about the monthly payment or the down payment, because either they're looking to buy something right now or they're looking to basically use this as like a retirement fund, like an annuity kind of over the next X number of years. And even if they're later in life and might pass away, they want to pass monthly payments to their children, their heirs, as opposed to a house that's like, well, what are they going to do with it now? So it's really figuring out what is important to the seller more than anything else to seller finance, and then giving them that and seeing if it still works for you, and then negotiating from that place. But the market, the way it is with high interest rates, even seller financing becomes a little more tough. Not to say we haven't done 0%. We have a 0% seller finance deal right now. We had a 3.5% last year, 2%. We have low interest rate seller finance deals, but you have to really solve the other areas that they're looking for. That's a big component of it. Where sub 2, there's so much motivation typically by the seller. It's either going to work or it's not. There's not a lot of wiggle room. Hopefully that answered part of that question.
Yeah. Do you ever have you ever had success in like stacking the down on a shorter term seller finance? So you're taking out seller finance on the bulk of it, and then they say they want 20% down, negotiating with the seller to stack that into like a 5-year balloon with payments, so that you are walking in 100% financed.
Yes, but it just depends on their motivation. If they need it, for example, one of my deals, it was $1 million property. He had 500,000 of equity, and I took out a new loan because he needed a portion of that money up front. He needed $200,000 up front. Either I could have paid him $200,000 and he would have financed 300, or I took out a whole new loan at 800, which paid him out. And then he was able to give me, after the 200 he needed, he was able to give me back the 300 to cover all of my entry costs. For him, he really needed that money up front. So that other solution would not have been viable. But for someone who needs the money, but maybe not right away, that can be a viable option for them. It really depends on the seller specifically and their specific situation, what they're looking to accomplish.
Cool.
So it could work for sure, but it just depends on the seller and like what they're looking to do. If they're looking to retire now, retire later, they're looking to whatever. I mean, I used to assume a lot of what sellers want. Now I just ask them very directly. I just stopped assuming, and that helped a lot when I negotiate.
Well,
Any more
thank you.
questions before we wrap up today's underwriting session? Awesome.
I got a quick one, Michael, just to,
Oh yeah, go for
if
it.
you don't mind, on a PMP, say you go on 50-50 on the scenario.
Yep, right here.
Say you have that reserve of this example that you had about $9,000. Would you just keep that in reserve, or would you pay that, or this PMP stays on forever without getting paid?
Our money partner is typically going to own the asset with you as long as you own the asset, unless you put out like a buyout clause or you set up a specific timeline, whether it's your operating agreement, joint venture agreement, whatever agreement you have with them to own the property together. For us, it's an LLC and then an operating agreement in that LLC, which includes, all this information. It's very similar to a joint venture agreement, which is something that we implement now too. So, but it depends on how you structure with your private money partner. One thing I will highlight is you also want to define in your operating agreement or your joint venture agreement how much money you're setting aside for reserves. And what we say, we outline 10% of total income goes to capital expenditures and maintenance until we hit X dollar amount. until we hit X dollar amount, and then we split the remainder of it. We keep, let's say it's 20,000. We keep the $20,000 amount in reserves in a bank account, separate savings account. And then we split the remainder as,
Like a distribution?
yeah, just as cash flow. I don't know why the word.
Okay.
We split the rest, and then if and when we have to use our reserves, then we just keep saving for it. Let's say it goes down to 15,000, and we keep saving for it until it hits 20,000. Then after
Mhm.
that point, then we continue distributing it as well. But
Okay.
we set that, like we set this percentage of the rental income every month, and then once it gets to this point, this is how we disperse it. And it's should just follow whatever your cash flow percentage is, or your ownership percentage, whatever. But you have to outline that stuff specifically.
Okay. Awesome. Appreciate that.
Cool. Anything else? Awesome. All right. Thanks guys for joining. This will be in the training vault, I believe level 6. So you got to unlock the recordings. So have fun when you get there. Bye,
Cool.
guys.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you,
Of course.
Michael.
Bye, y'all.